WTMM Mechanicsville, a Town Square media station.
It is a base hit.
The 27-time world champion Yankees play right here on 104.5 The Team.
Sports Center.
Good afternoon, I'm Bob Picozzi. They won the first two games of the series at home by 31-19. The Cavaliers are back at home tonight. They'll host Toronto Game 5 of the NBA Eastern Finals, 8:30 Eastern Time on ESPN, 7:30 on ESPN Radio. The series is tied at 2. Raptors center Jonas Valanciunas, who has missed the last 8 games with a sprained ankle, says he's ready to go tonight. This is the Sharks' 25th season in the NHL, and tonight in San Jose, they can advance to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time. Leading 3-2, San Jose will host St. Louis Game 6 Eastern Finals. Afternoon baseball, National League. The Cubs lead the Cardinals 6-2 in the top of the fourth. Jason Hayward and Ben Zobrist each with 2 RBIs. The Mets have just increased their lead to 2-0 over Washington. Headed to the bottom of the 7th, Rene Rivera with an RBI single for the second run. American League, Cleveland 2, White Sox nothing, top 3 on a 2-run triple by Lonnie Chisenhall. The Rangers have tied the Angels 4-4 now, top 3. Kansas City leads Minnesota 5-4, bottom 4. Interleague play, Phil's 5, Detroit 4, top 6. Second round of the French Open, 2-seed Andy Murray, 3-seed Stan Wawrinka advance.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Your home for New York sports presents Levack and Wolf on 104.5 The Team.
Crazy news coming out of Buffalo lately as far as comments being made, policies being distributed. The best person to reach out to for us is and will always be Mike Rodak. He covers the Bills for ESPN. Mike, you used to work for the Patriots, and I don't remember them being information Gestapo the way the Buffalo Bills are. Your thoughts on the new policy?
Yeah, I mean, I covered the Patriots for 3 years for ESPN, and it was certainly restrictive. I mean, the Patriots are known as a more secretive organization, certainly, and, you know, they definitely limited what we could talk about from practice. We couldn't even live tweet during practice around the Patriots, but we were certainly allowed to, to say if we saw an interception or a drop pass at practice. So when we saw this policy come out yesterday for the Bills, I've covered the Bills for my 4th season now, that was pretty shocking to see that sort of wording in the policy. Whether or not they meant it to be truly, we can't talk about interceptions or drop passes, or we simply can't chart them statistically. That's what it said. It said can't talk about interceptions, can't talk about drop passes, can't detail injuries, can't. A lot of different can'ts from practice, and as journalists, that's obviously a problem. I mean, our job is to report what we see. Whether it's good or bad, there's no mention of not reporting touchdowns or not reporting catches in there. So obviously it was an affront to us. There was a lot of outrage, to say the least, not only among local media in Buffalo, but also nationally. A lot of national media commented on this. So to see this come out yesterday was definitely strange, to say the least.
104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. Levack and Wolf. Gaz in for Wolf today with Mike Rodak, our Buffalo Bills reporter.
Mike, is there something that happened? Was there this one event that said, okay, this happened, now we're changing the policy for the Buffalo Bills?
There really wasn't. Nothing that I'm aware of. Nothing that really was an impetus for this. I know going back 2 years ago, I remember Doug Marrone had some issues with some of the things I was reporting from OTAs in terms of the detail on it would have been E.J. Manuel that year. Some of the personnel that was on the field. I wasn't getting into detailed personnel groups or formations of plays or anything like that. But I remember Doug Marrone had some problems with that, and that died off after a few weeks. But the Bills have had a policy, for years now. It just hasn't been written down in a 5-page document like it was this year. It hasn't been as extensive as it was this year. I mean, it's been standard for years that we can't, detail strategic, unusual formations, things like that, things that, the team thinks could come back to bite them in the regular season. But we've never been prohibited from talking about interceptions or completion percentage or things like that. So I don't really think there's one, driving force behind it. I think some of the theories I've heard, part of it is teams have their in-house media. And for a lot of teams, that's growing. In-house reporters, in-house cameras, stuff on their own websites. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was just newspapers and TV stations who covered teams. Now it's a lot more, and teams want to own that content. If something happens at practice, they want that to be in their website exclusively. So limiting what traditional outside media can report makes what the in-house media can report more valuable. So I think there's a business aspect to it. But whether or not this came down from the coaching staff, from Rex Ryan, he denied any involvement with it, but there certainly could have been input from other coaches who didn't want detail from practice getting out. But we don't know an exact cause why this policy was expanded this year.
Mike, how seriously are you and the other reporters taking this? Like, are you guys seriously concerned that at some point you're going to tweet something out and Bill's security is going to walk you off the campus?
I mean, if that happens, that's a story, right? Which that's just the way it is. But I really don't think that's going to happen. The sense I got from talking to the team well after this policy came out yesterday is when they finally addressed it with us was, it doesn't look as bad as it reads on paper, which take that whatever way you want. I mean, I'm going to read it literally because that's what it says on paper. But their stance was, you can keep doing what you've been doing for the last couple of years. We just don't want you guys to be posting play-by-play and stats from practice, which I don't think we've really done. I mean, we're certainly, like last year, we tracked how E.J. Manuel, Matt Castle, and Tyrod Taylor, how many snaps they're getting with the first team, which is valuable information. It was in the context of spring practice, but it's still detail that I think fans wanted to know. We tracked some of their completions. Say the 11-on-11 drill, if Tyrod Taylor threw 4 passes and he missed all of them, then that's notable.
Right.
He went 0 for 4. I don't think that's unfair to say Tyrod Taylor went 0 for 4. But that's the sort of thing that the Bills don't want. They don't want a stat sheet, so to speak, coming from an OTA. But, again, I think a lot of that detail is valuable. So I'm not really afraid of, repercussions. I mean, I can't imagine the Bills kicking people out of practice or taking credentials away, especially after a lot of the national attention that this has gotten. So in the end, I think it'll blow over pretty quickly and be back to business as usual.
But not to add more fear to what maybe with you going forward is that, look, you brought up the idea that now teams, Bills and others in the NFL, want to drive traffic to their website and have exclusive stories for their website. My fear is that this is going to continue to go throughout the NFL. And every NFL team is going to say, look, this is our policy. This is what's going to happen. Is there any fear with other reporters or colleagues that you have to say, I hope what's happening in Buffalo doesn't happen to my team that I'm covering?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, part of the justification the Bills used with us yesterday for implementing this policy was that other teams have these policies in place. And that is true to some extent. I mean, I've heard about the Cardinals policy being pretty tough. I've heard about the Bears policy, obviously the Patriots one. But once several teams start doing this, then other teams will get the idea, hey, other teams are doing it, then we should be able to do it too. And eventually, you'll get up to 32 teams doing it. So that's certainly the fear. I've talked to reporters who have covered this league for 2, 3, 4 decades, and, they'll tell me stories about how these teams were covered back then when you could have lunch with an owner at the owners' meetings or, have pretty wide-ranging access to a team because back then they needed you. They needed the outside media to spread the word about the team. The league wasn't as successful or as popular yet, and it didn't have the internet, to produce your own in-house content. You needed to rely on printing presses and TV broadcasts for that sort of thing. But the times are different now, and teams can control the message. They can hire their own reporters who are on their payroll and can say what they want them to say, and that's the direction things are going. So I think fans, it's important for fans to realize that if they want an objective view about the team, they should still consume traditional media. I'm not saying newspapers necessarily, but I'm saying outside outlets that don't have employees of the team writing about the team.
Mike Rodak here with us on Levack and Wolf. Gaz in for Wolf today. Mike, when these stories, this policy came out shortly after Doug Whaley stuck his foot directly in his mouth saying that humans shouldn't play football. Any chance this is retaliation for you guys being so bold as to quote him?
No, I know, right? It actually, the the timeline is actually flipped there. He said it on the radio on Tuesday morning. It didn't really make a stir at the time because it was just a couple of lines he threw into the interview, but it kind of came up a little bit later in the day when people were listening again to the broadcast of his radio interview, and then it was actually after the Bills policy came out. So that whole situation with Whaley's comment, I think most people understood it, within the context of his answer about Sammy Watkins. He was essentially trying to make the point that injuries are inevitable in football. But to put it the way he did, that humans aren't supposed to play football, was obviously damaging, to say the least, to the league. I would not be surprised if he heard from executives at the league about that. And that most likely led to his statement today, on Wednesday, that said he used a poor choice of words on the radio, and then he kind of launched into a compliment or praise of the league's safety initiatives, which definitely makes it seem like it came down from Park Ave in New York. So again, I mean, he's probably not wrong. He's probably right about that. Humans aren't supposed to play a game where heads are clashing at the speed that they are, and concussions and injuries are happening, and he's most likely right about that, and that is an issue. But to hear a man who's in charge of 90 humans playing football, and he's signing them and he's recruiting them in some ways to his team, to hear him say that they aren't supposed to play the game, that's bizarre. And that, I think, was the most jarring fact of that quote, even given the context that he said it in.
Mike Rodak covers the Bills for ESPN. Mike, the last thing I got to know is any new news on Shaq Lawson and that shoulder. When does he expect to be back in camp? Any of that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Rex Ryan obviously wasn't saying much about that yesterday, and rightfully so. I mean, they've gotten burned on that situation already. They've gotten burned in injury situations in the past. So really the only thing that the team is admitting right now or letting out is that they, do expect him to miss some regular season time. Now, the timeline that Adam Schefter gave was 5 to 6 months, and he had the surgery last week that puts him in mid-October to mid-November range. Whether he returns to practice before then, maybe that's possible. And then, it's most likely a PUP situation where he misses the first 6 weeks and then he can start practicing again, and then they make some sort of determination on when he comes back. Now, the thing about their schedule, late October, early November, is that they have a cross-country trip to Seattle, and then they have their bye week, and then they have another trip to Cincinnati. So you could bring him back. Yeah, I don't know if you want your first game for Shaq Lawson to be at Seattle after a cross-country trip, his very first game in the NFL. That might be tough. Maybe you give him that bye week off, and you have him come back for that road trip to Cincinnati. That might be the most realistic expectation, in which case, his return won't be until November. But it's definitely the team is admitting he's not going to be back for the start of the regular season. That's definitely going to be true.
Mike Rodak covers the Buffalo Bills for ESPN, and he helps us out when we have questions like, should humans play the game, and is it okay to say somebody drops a pass? Mike, we appreciate you, brother, and don't get in trouble, man. Don't look anybody directly in the eye while you tweet about them.
Yeah, hopefully this audio recording will self-destruct in 10 seconds. I never said what I just said. Never reported anything.
Fortunately for you, I doubt many people are listening to this, so you're okay.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate you. Mike Rodak. Yeah, I mean, that's just crazy. Any pertinent information that may be useful to you or your fans or listeners or readers, please don't ever give out about the Buffalo Bills. Ever.
And Mike brings up a really fascinating point about the sense that all these teams, whether Bills, Raiders, Bucks, Giants, whoever, they have their own website reporters and things like that. And there still is a policy of who gets credentialed to be at practice.
Right.
So someone could say, well, who cares? Mike Rodak's always going to be at practice. That's not how it works. You still have to apply. Even though he works for ESPN and guys work for other outlets, you still have to go through the process of being there to go to practice. Now, if they don't accept guys, they're going to have a fit about it, but that's up to the team's discretion who they want to be there. So if you want to be a wise guy and say, I don't care what I say, I'll tweet what I want. Yeah, don't test it.
The one thing, though, you do have to wonder, like, they're the explicit business partners, ESPN, Fox, CBS, NBC. They're always going to have somebody there. Will it be Mike Rodak? If Mike Rodak is, because, of course, we didn't get into Mike's tweets yesterday. We're absolutely hysterical. just being as vague as humanly possible. The only tweet